Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Some Christian Guy, and today we're going to be discussing the fifth of the Bible contradictions. So contradiction number 5 of the supposed contradictions, where we go through each one as meticulously as possible and try to see whether they are indeed a contradiction or shoddy scholarship, should we say. So, where we usually begin, we're going to begin at the original source of the claim, and we have here. Where do we have? Right here. Who was Abijam's mother? Okay, First Kings and Second Chronicles. Right, this is where it is. Who was Abijam's mother? And the claim is, when we go into the verses now, it says it lists two different names, and this is a contradiction because, you know, if it's two people both claiming that they're his mother, well, then there's obvious contradiction here, and then the implication is that then the Bible is in its entirety is invalidated because of this mistake. It's a little bit. Let me put it. One interesting thing, right? There is not a single historical document on the face of this earth that does not contain errors of some description. Okay, of some description, even not only errors, but even sort of stories or accounts that are a little bit fantastical, miraculous, and stuff doesn't exist, right? From those old days and stuff like that. Yet the only time people have a problem with that is when it comes to the Bible. That's literally the only time anyone ever has a problem with it is when it comes to the Bible. So all the other documents and historical sources that discuss anyone from Alexander the Great to Confucius, whoever it is, when there's slight errors and slight little issues and stuff like that, it doesn't bother people. On the whole, they still think, well, this is valid to establish whatever historicity it is that we wish to establish. But when it comes to the Bible, even something as minor as getting someone's mother's name slightly wrong now invalidates the whole thing. Therefore, Christianity is false. It's a little bit ridiculous. But, you know, that aside, it would be, to be fair to the atheist position, if Christians weren't jumping around in a lot of cases the way they are with with very, very sort of overblown sort of claims of infallibility that don't necessarily resonate with what the Bible itself claims in terms of what its uses and purposes and degree of infallibility is, then for the most part I don't think that that atheists would necessarily have an issue. So to a degree I can understand it's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to some of the loudmouth Christians that you get out there. So, you know, fair enough. Okay, fair enough. You know, and sort of one wants to sort of stick it to the Christians. As someone who's an ex-atheist, I can totally dig that. I appreciate that. Sometimes you just want to stick it to people's, like, there's a contradiction, now shut up. Leave me alone. So I can sympathize, right? Seriously. Even though I'm a Christian, even now, I sometimes feel like with certain Christian groups and people, I'm like, just shut up and get lost already, okay? You're full of nonsense, because there is unfortunately there's a lot of nonsense around in Christian circles. It's a pity, but I'm afraid, unfortunately, there's not a whole heck of a lot we can do about it, because people have free will, you know, at the end of the day. So anyway, let's get into the sources. It provides us. It cites two sources. Now, usually I'm using Bible Gateway because Bible Gateway is just nice, easy access on the internet and so on and so forth. But today, I want to actually use the Concordance, right? So we've got here Blue Letter Bible. This is strong Concordance. You can use Concordance in other things. I'm using the KJV because most people like KJV, you know, sort of thing. I repeat, I am not a KJV onlyist, whatever people want to call them, but you know, there's nothing wrong with translation. It's good enough for my purposes and for most people's purposes. Fair enough. Now, I want to use the Blue Letter Bible because it goes into the original Hebrew, and the concordance is actually very, very useful in this particular case. Now, this is before we go there, let's first establish what we usually establish first. If we grant that this is a contradiction, right? So let's grant the assumption. Let's say it is a contradiction. Does it affect what the Bible says of itself in James, which it says, is it James? Yeah, it's James, where it says the Bible is good for reproof, for doctrine, unto good works, and so on and so forth, right? Even if it is a contradiction, does this error affect Christian doctrine in the slightest? And the answer is no. There is no doctrine in Christianity in the past 2,000 odd years of Christianity that centers around the name or the identity of Abijam's mother. Okay, it does not touch. So even if it is, right, let's say within the next few minutes we fail to make the case, even if it is a contradiction, it completely, it doesn't touch Christian theology at all. It doesn't touch Christian doctrine at all. So the Bible, for the purposes that it is there for, remains intact in terms of infallibility for doctrine, reproof, etc., all those kinds of things. That remains intact nevertheless, because no doctrine whatsoever hinges on this particular issue. It's merely a retelling, stating facts. This was his mother, that was his mother, this was what was going on. It's just trying to whoever's writing is just trying to give as an accurate historical account and calling it like they see it. Because remember, when in our first video we talk about the Bible is by inspiration, not directly, it's not directly dictated, and at no point do we believe, like with a lot of pagans, where a spirit takes over the person and they begin to write automatically. None of that, right? Even though there are specific portions of the Bible that are directly revealed. Let's say there's a vision, like if you take Daniel, he has a vision or a dream, and then an angel comes and gives him the specific interpretation of various things. So in those cases, there is a direct, it's like, listen, this is what that's about, where there's an actual a supernatural entity that is communicating directly and saying this is what it is, right? But 90%, 99% of it, it's by inspiration. It's people who have been moved to record various things, and so you have that perspective issue over there that we discussed. Anyway, all of those things are in the first video, so it's not directly dictated. It's not written by spiritual possession that goes on an automatic writing that does occur with some of these things. And none of that. It's individual. So the individual, and that's how God wants. He wants personal relationships with us. He wants personal testimonies. And if you know anything about Christians in general are very big on personal testimonies. This is how I've seen the hand of providence work in my life. This is how it's changed my life and all that kind of stuff. And as body believers together, it all sort of gels and comes together. And that's what, and so you're going to get different perspectives from different people. And just because the perspective is different doesn't mean that the overall thesis is necessarily false. Okay. And anyway, we covered this in the first video. So let's go to the internet source. Back to the internet source. So in First Kings, right, which is the first one, it does talk about here King Jeroboam and his son, the son of Nebat, reigned in the 18th year of this guy, Jeroboam, reigned Abijam, and these two eventually come to a head. They were this period of time in Israel was highly tumultuous. A lot of fighting, a lot of civil unrest, civil war, a lot of issues, and a lot of these kings, actually most of these kings were very evil. They were not good kings at all. Okay, a lot of them were not good kings in the slightest, and so that's sort of the contextual milieu that this occurs in. A lot of infighting, a lot of problems, sort of thing. It says here, he walked in all of the sins of his father. His father was Rehoboam, which was the son of Solomon, son of David, right? Sins of his father which he had done before him, and in his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father. So David wasn't his direct father. David was the father of his father, but we talk about our fathers, our forefathers and stuff like that. That's how we discuss, that's how we use the parlance. And over here it shows that his mother's name was Makkah, right? So if we go here, Makkah, there it is. I've got another tab here. I've already got it open. So let's go back here. Let's go there. So I've already got it open. So here's Makkah. This is what it talks about. Right, strong concordance. There it is. It's a Hebrew. There's the Hebrew, and so on and so forth. It's a proper noun, feminine noun. Can also be proper masculine. So it seems like there's a bit of a. So there's one thing we need to understand with old names is that old names, not names just an arbitrary thing. They actually had meanings, and it could mean different things. So Makkah, it means oppression. Okay, that's basically what it means generally. So this is the outline of biblical usage. So there's many different people. So it does appear to be a unisex name, right? So it can be a name for both men and women. So in some cases, in one case, it was a father of Hanan, and so. But our particular interest is this one over here, F, as a proper feminine noun. So proper masculine noun, those contexts elsewhere in the Bible, and over here, proper feminine noun. We are interested in this one over here, the daughter of Absalom, wife of King Rehoboam of Judah, and mother of King Abijam of Judah. Okay, so we need these details are very, very important. Okay. Then if we go to the second one, we see again it's basically telling the same thing, right? Basically speaking, with slightly different details, right? And so there was war between Abijah and Jeroboam. And so we see here his mother's name also was Micaiah, the daughter, and here it actually specifies the daughter of Uriel. So the first one, the daughter of Abishalom, or Absalom, as we otherwise know him. And over here, the daughter of Uriel. Okay? So it's definitely speaking about two different people here, right? And so if we go to Micaiah, we see that this is the name, how it was in the Hebrew. Micaiah, who is like God, right? And so proper masculine noun is there. And then here, also used as the daughter of Uriel the Gibeah, also wife of King Rehoboam of Judah. So it would appear, all right, so they're both listed as the wife of Rehoboam. So it would appear that Rehoboam had more than one wife, okay? And mother of King Abijah of Judah. But it also lists her. It's a different person, all right? So one is the daughter of Absalom, one is the daughter of Uriel. Both of them were the wife of King Rehoboam, which was Abijah's father, right? King Abijah of Judah. So it would appear that Abijah has two mothers because his father has got two wives. And we understand this. So, for example, if we go to a verse in Chronicles, right? Oh my goodness, my battery's gone flat on this stupid mouse. Can you believe it? In the middle of the video. Figures. Maybe I should just be better prepared, huh? Right, so here we go. Rehoboam loved Makkah, the daughter of Absalom, above all his wives. And so if we actually look at it, he actually had 18 wives in total and 60 concubines, so 60 concubines, and he had 28 sons, right? And 60 daughters. So 28 sons and also 60 daughters. So this guy was busy. Right? This guy was quite busy, okay? So what we have here are two separate women, okay? And both are said to be the mother of this particular individual. Now, another thing we need to notice is who is the daughter of Uriel. So who is Uriel? If we go to see who is Uriel, right? It says here, chief of the Levitical line of Kohath in David's time. And this is very, very important, right? Very, very important. He is the maternal grandfather of Abijah, the maternal grandfather. So it would appear that his biological mother is Micaiah. She is the biological mother, right? Maternal grandfather, Levitical line, because, right? Maternal grandfather Abijah. So this is the maternal line, the biological line is her. She's actually the biological mother. So it would appear that the other one is a stepmother or one of his mothers, because his father was married to 18. So technically he had 18 mothers. Technically one biological and 17 stepmothers, as it were, and they just say it's mother, right? And for whatever reason, the individual writing chose to bring forward particular ones, for whatever reason that it might be. So daughter of Uriel. So this is actually an important guy, right? Chief of the Levitical line of Kohath in David. So the Levites were the priests, was the priestly tribe. Okay, so he's quite an important guy out in David's time. And then Absalom, right? If we go and we look who so Maacah, the other woman, is the daughter of Absalom, right? And Absalom is also, so father-in-law of Rehoboam, third son of David. Absalom, my father is peace. So you can see it doesn't actually link them other than by marriage. Okay? Other than by marriage. So third son of David. Now we know that David was from the tribe of Judah, and so, right, so her line, so it's definitely two different people. Maacah, daughter of Absalom, which is from the tribe of Judah, right? And then Micaiah, daughter of Uriel, who was from the tribe of Levi. So definitely two different women here, and we know that there's 18 wives and 3 scores. So, right, so how do we resolve this? It's actually kind of simple, right? It's not too much of an issue. So basically, this is what you've got, right? This is what you've got here. You've got Rehoboam, which is common, right? Maacah. Now, if we look at the other verse here, internet source, go to internet source, and we see here, Rehoboam loved Maacah, the daughter of Absalom, above all. Above all. Okay? His wives and concubines. Right? He loved them above all. And if we go here, the one that he loved, Micaiah, was Uriel. So he didn't love her as much as he loved her. So this is probably why it mentions where the difference comes in here, right? So if we go Micaiah, so the reason why one probably mentions the other, so technically they're both his mother. So even in modern ways of speaking, right? Almost all of us have divorced parents. Okay, that's just one of the things about the modern world, right? Everywhere, about half of all marriages fail. Okay, and so a lot of us have more than one mother, technically speaking, one by marriage and one by blood. Okay, so we don't actually have a contradiction here. We just have a bit of a issue in terms of genealogy and figuring things out. So when the one verse is talking about Micaiah, right? There's my little blood drops there that I drew. She is his biological mother, right? So in one sense, it's listing the biological mother, okay, as his mother, and is not interested in putting this individual is probably more interested in accuracy in terms of biological lineage, whereas the individual who lists Maacah as his mother is then probably interested in putting forward who is the most the queen mother, as it were, who is the most prominent woman in the royal family at that particular time. So because the verse says that Rehoboam loved her the most and favored her the most, so she would have probably been sort of like, like we have today. We call a queen mother, but we only have one queen. But in that thing, he had 18 wives, so you've got 18 queens, so to speak. But the one was obviously the most favored, so that's why it refers to her specifically. And because she had maybe a more prominent role, she would have, that might have been why the individual chose to list her as his mother. But no matter who they're listing, technically, because whether they actually had the term, I don't think they actually have a term in Hebrew, stepmother, as it were, the way we have today. Because in those days there were so many, in terms of having not only concubines and it, which is contrary to the faith, by the way, but the kings had concubines, had many wives, etc., etc., that this stuff was so normal. Whereas for Protestants, and in the Western world specifically, we developed the term stepmother, for example, because for the most part, with Protestantism and as the West Christianized and all these kinds of things in the past few thousand years, it was always said that you have one wife only, right? The whole idea of polygamy or polyamory and stuff like that was forbidden, so that the idea of a man getting divorced and have the divorces were anathema. So once divorces and things like that started becoming a little bit more prominent, it's such an unusual thing that we actually developed a term for it, a term for stepfather, stepmother, and all these kinds of things to sort of differentiate these sorts of things. But back in the day, they had no word for such a distinction, sort of thing, right? So whoever was looking for you after you was your mother. And even nowadays, some people might favor, if some people have particularly wretched mothers and fathers, and then there's a divorce and they get a new mother or new father, a lot of the times, rather than referring to that individual as stepmom or stepdad, they will actually, because they respect the new mother or the new father more than the original one, who might be a bit of a problematic individual, they will then tend to refer to them just as mother or father. So this is actually just an issue of genealogy and an issue of how we reckon things and stuff like that. So yeah, so basically that's how it is. He's linked to the two mothers, one by blood and one by marriage, essentially. And we know this is definitely two different individuals. Now, there are some people out there who, in their attempts to resolve this, what they do is they say it's the same person but with different names. The rationalization behind this is, in the olden days, a lot of people had more than one name, or would be referred to by more than one title. So, for example, if you take Abraham used to be called Abram, and then his name was changed to Abraham. His wife used to be Sarai, and then it was changed to Sarah. Isaac, for example, was changed to no, sorry, not Isaac. Jacob. Jacob used to be called Jacob, but then his name was changed to Israel. And you have a lot. This is very, very common in the Bible, where people have more than one names. In fact, there was as far as I'm aware, it's actually a very, very prominent individual in the apologetics circuit, as it were, was the one that put forward this idea that it's the same person but two different names. But if you actually pay attention to the text, I believe that to what the text says and what the old concordances have to tell us about these kinds of things, and so on and so forth, if you go into the Hebrew, if you go into the text and really look at it properly, you will then find that that the idea that it's the same person it's not tenable. It's wrong. Okay, it's flat out wrong. So I would advise, be careful when you just blindly accept. And this is interestingly enough, this is something that atheists say a lot. Be careful about just listening to your preachers and stuff like that when they say that something is the case. Go and figure it out for yourself, right? Read the Bible for yourself. Go and figure these things out for yourself. Don't just blindly accept what people tell you about the Bible and so on and so forth, right? But atheists say that about Christians, but atheists do the same thing. A lot of atheists throw these Bible contradictions around, They've never, most atheists have never even opened a Bible. So how do they know? They're just taking it from someone who else who told them. So everyone on both sides really, really commits this sin. So essentially, we don't have a contradiction here at all. Just a question of genealogy, a question of reckoning, what was going on at the time. It doesn't affect doctrine, and so on and so forth. So ultimately, do we have a contradiction? Yeah. No, we don't. We don't have a contradiction here. And the individual who came up with this as a contradiction, who insisted that this is a contradiction, was either just flat out being dishonest, or at worst is just being dishonest and deceptive, and at best it's just very, very careless, very, very shallow reading of the scriptures, of the text. Because even if you don't believe in the text, even if you think Christianity is stupid, which fair enough, we're all entitled to our opinions and stuff like that. I used to think it was stupid, but you've got to look at what it's actually saying, and there's no point in lying. You get no points in just running through it just to get a leg over on other people. And I say this to atheists, and I say this to Christians. There's no point in cutting corners. Like, for example, that other story where I said, where the guy says it's the same person, but it's the same person but with two different names, right? That's just, I'm pretty sure that's, even though the individual is I'm not accusing him necessarily of being dishonest, but a lot of times in our zeal to get a leg over on other people, or one over, not a leg over, that's a sexual connotation, isn't it? Forgive me. But to get one over on other people, we often rush to silly, shallow conclusions, and satisfy ourselves with shallow readings and shallow reasonings on various things. And so we should avoid that, because it's confusion and stuff, and then we all sort of run around accusing each other and hating each other, which is not a particularly good thing. Even though we disagree, I would prefer to get along with atheists than to not get along with them at the end of the day. That's the ideal. Okay, so there you have it. It's not a contradiction. This is very, very shallow scholarship so far that we've seen. We're only 5 out of 400, so who knows? We might have something down the line that'll really stump us, that will really cause us to have to recoil and be like, damn, this is really something. But for the moment, so far, if this is an indication of what's to come, I'm not I'm not worried about my chances of being able to debunk all of these kinds of things. This is very, very simply a case of someone not reading the text carefully, because it's easily resolvable. I'm no genius, right? I mean, the guys that made this, these are guys like Sam Harris and all this kind of thing. They're a lot smarter than I am, right? These guys have got PhDs and stuff like that. I'm just some guy, right? And it didn't take me particularly long. It took me like 10-15 minutes to go through it, and then maybe another 15-20 minutes just to make sure, check out all the references, half an hour, 45 minutes, just to really make sure that I had it. And that was it, right? It doesn't take a lot. It really doesn't take much. If you actually care about the truth of the matter, it doesn't take a lot. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I hope this one helps you out. Again, as usual, go ahead and share and subscribe this stuff for other people to have a look at. It might help them. People that their faith are waning in the Bible because they believe this nonsense about contradictions and stuff like that. Might help them out. Who knows? Have a sober and realistic look at all these things. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, peace out. God bless you, and until next time, thank you very much. And yeah, cheerio, man.